All right, I'm here. Welcome to the Stillwater Frontier Rotary Club's Mayor Candidate Forum. The candidates can come on up. I am Kevin Clark, and I have the pleasure of serving as moderator. We're joined today by Mayor Will Joyce and challenger Marc Trotter. They will each have 2 minutes for opening statements and closing statements. And I will ask prepared questions with the candidates rotating going first. They will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. There will be no questions from the floor. And we will begin with a 2-minute opening statement from Mr. Joyce.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Frontier Rotary, for having us here today. We appreciate the opportunity to come and be part of this forum and to talk to you a little bit about the mayor's office and the race for mayor, and excited to be here. So opening statements. Most of you hopefully know at least a little bit about me. You've seen me here for a while and on council now for 6 years, for the last 4 of those as the mayor. Hopefully you have a sense of who I am and sort of my approach to leadership in the mayor's office. I think the question I've gotten most over the last couple of months is, why are you actually willing to do this again? And I guess it's a good question. It's been certainly a challenging time, certainly over the last couple of years at least. But the answer to that question is pretty simple for me. I mean, I love Stillwater. I chose to move my family back here 10 years ago because this is where we wanted to raise our children. This is where we want to invest our lives. And the time that I've spent on the city council has been challenging, but it's also been very rewarding. And I feel like we've been able to do a lot of great work for our community. I think there's a lot of great momentum happening in Stillwater right now, from a development perspective, from the work we've been able to do in transportation, from the work that we're doing in community engagement. And it's been like I said, it's been a challenge, but it's also been a big reward. And I want to see that momentum continue, and I want to see the plans that we've been working on come to fruition. And that's why I am asking for you to vote for me again and to reelect me as the mayor of Stillwater. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Trotter, 2 minutes.
I got to turn this or tilt it down because I'm vertically challenged. My name is Marc Trotter. I'm a lighting designer by trade. What that means is I quite literally illuminate things for a living. So whether it's a band, someone who's getting ready to sing a song and they need to be lit, seen, or perhaps a guitarist who's going to play a sweet solo or something, or perhaps some dancers in a dance recital, I have to make sure that they are seen clearly. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I have to make sure that they are seen clearly and, just known, right, by the audience, by the people. And so really, I'm asking you to consider allowing me to bring this skill to our city government in a metaphorical sense. I want to bring the gift of illumination to areas of ambiguity that surround our local city government. The reality is our government needs to be transparent about their conduct, right? They need to, and we need to strive for that. We need clarity in how things are done, whether it be in your roads, infrastructure, whether we're going to decide on opening up a street or closing it. We need to reach out to those citizens and make sure we hear their perspectives individually, locally. And so really, I just want to be a voice to that. I want to be a voice to bringing clarity back to the people, making sure that no matter what it is, we always make sure that you understand what's happening with your tax dollars. Are they being managed correctly? Are we following the intent of the people? And so with that in mind, I've heard lots of questions and concerns and stories over the past several years about various things, various areas that remain a bit ambiguous. One of those areas, I hear people always asking, and I just would like some clarity on this. What happened to the Wondertorium?
Okay, we'll ask the candidates to back up a little bit for the microphone as well. If you hear distortion, you need to back up. All right, and Mr. Trotter, the next question goes to you. In addition to the mayor race, the February ballot includes 2 tax increases, one replacing the 0.5% transportation sales tax with a 1% tax, and also increasing the visitor tax from 4% to 7%. What is your position on each proposal?
Okay, so I am of the sincere opinion that the only fair tax is a sales tax. Here's why. Man, that distortion, there's like this real fine line. Why do I believe that? The reality is the sales tax is the only discriminatory tax that exists. It's the one tax on earth that doesn't care about your background. It doesn't care about what you've done, how much money you make. It doesn't care where you come from. None of that is relevant. And it's also the one tax that you know how much you're going to pay up front. You're going to know how much it costs you when you walk out of that store. You're not going to get nailed April 15th by hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases. And so therefore, the flat sales tax really seems like the fairest way to go. The problem I see with the visitor tax is it is in addition to the existing sales tax. It's on top of that. It's targeting our hotels and our Airbnbs. I can't support that. It doesn't seem just to me. It doesn't seem right. So just on that principle alone, I can't support that. I absolutely believe in Visit Stillwater. I think they're doing great work. I think we need to focus on how to make sure that our dollars are appropriated the way they intend. The same goes for the transportation tax. In a year with the inflation where it is, I don't think it's good timing on raising that. I think we need to manage what we have better.
All right, Mr. Joyce.
I'm in support of both the transportation sales tax and the visitors tax. You all probably know that sales tax is the only operational funding that the city of Stillwater and any city in Oklahoma has. We don't receive income taxes or property taxes for our general operational budgets. And so we have to fund police, fire, roads, transportation, all city operational funding out of sales tax. When we want to do additional projects like we want to do with transportation, we have about $75 or $80 million of planned identified transportation projects that need to be done. We don't have the funding to do that on an ongoing basis. And so we've got to look at where we get that. The sales tax, I think, is the way, as Mr. Trotter says, at least the visitors that come to town, students who live here, people who use our transportation infrastructure pay that when they're here in Stillwater. And so it seems like the best way to raise that transportation funding. We currently have a 1/2-cent sales tax. It raises about $4 million a year, and it pays to keep our roads where they are. If we want our roads to become better, we need to increase it. The visitors tax has been in place for 30 some years. It's never been raised. It's intended to invest in bringing visitors to our community. Visit Stillwater does a great job with that. We've got more hotels. We've got we've got a convention center project ongoing. So we need to be able to make sure that they're funded going forward.
All right, the next question goes to you, Mr. Joyce. Regardless of your view on the visitor tax increase, I don't care what your position is, if it's approved by the voters, the money is going to be available, right? So what are your ideas for how the 30% that will be administered by the Stillwater Economic Development Authority, as recommended by the Tourism Advisory Committee, could be used to make Stillwater a more attractive and vibrant destination?
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I appreciate you bringing that up. So of this new visitor tax increase, 30% of it will be designated for actual projects, hardcore projects that will happen in our community to attract visitors. Personally, I mean, I can tell you what I would like to see and the things that I've seen it used for in other communities. I have 4 kids in high school and below. We drive to Norman and Bartlesville and Sand Springs and Bixby and all over the state to go to sports tournaments, soccer tournaments, band contests, all that kind of thing. We don't have facilities like that in Stillwater. Those things are incredible money makers for the communities where they are. If you've ever traveled to a soccer tournament or a baseball tournament, people are staying in hotels, they're eating in restaurants, they're shopping in stores. I would like to see us use some of that funding to create something like that here in our community so that we can get those visitors here and we can get their sales tax and their hotel tax here too.
Mr. Trotter.
Yeah, so if that's passed, I would want to make sure it's ran as intended. I'd follow up with the people that came up with those ideas. I'm a little lost in some of those details, but I would make sure that we do it according to the letter of the law. I've been made aware of the fact that not all councils that we've had over the years have always done that. They like to change things according to what they think is right and they don't follow the intent of the vote of the people when it was passed, right? We've got to look back at what the intent is. This year, if it passes, I want to make sure that with integrity, it is appropriated as intended. That's my heart. We need to make sure of that. We need to make sure if it's not passed, we go back and look. Back in 1985, how was it intended? Not how can we extract some meaning or some leverage some other ideas out of it. We need to make sure it's done according to the will of the people. So regardless of my feelings on it, we need to make sure it's done according to the letter of the law.
All right, next question is yours, Mr. Trotter. I told you. Right. Raising, what I told him is that everybody forgets to stay, right? Okay, so raising the transportation tax would significantly increase the revenue available to repair roads and build roads here in Stillwater. However, at least in my view, we'll still be far short of the funding needed to fix every street in town the way we'd like to have them fixed. So what else, if anything, should the city be doing to make more funding available for transportation infrastructure?
So we need to go to our various departments, right? I'd like to meet with the department heads and determine what can we do to make some cuts, right? Where are the areas that we're spending too much? The tendency, as we all know, is corporations and governments like to max out their respective budgets every year, no matter what, because that way they ensure that they always get that extra amount. They always are going to have it there. And then later when they ask for more, they have grounds to receive it. I'd like to reverse this way of thinking and reverse this approach and consider instead, where can we squeeze more out of what we already have, what we've been entrusted with? We get a lot. We make a lot. Why not try and manage it a little bit differently? I think it's possible that things happen, right? It's not like a gotcha thing. It's not like people are intentionally doing it, but it's a different perspective. And when we put it in front of the department heads, well, we might be able to help bring them along, help them see where the savings can be found, and then manage the money that we've been given by all of us, the citizens, better. The reality is if we raise this transportation tax in 10 years, they're going to ask for it again. And eventually they're going to want to remove the sunset clause. I'm not okay with that. I'd like to keep the taxes low.
Mr. Joyce.
Yeah, I think in terms of additional funding outside of the sales tax, there's a few things that we have done over the last several years. One is certainly looking at places in our city government where we could spend less on other things and try to move some of that money to transportation. That's certainly been part of what Norm McNichol as the city manager has done. And I think if you go talk to his department heads, they will tell you that their budgets have been very closely scrutinized over the past several years for sure. One of the things we've also done is we've actually done a full sort of audit review of all of our reserve funds. So there's a lot of reserve funds that the city has where we save money for future needs. Some of those were actually a little bit bigger than they needed to be when we did reviews. And so we pulled money out of some of those reserve funds and put in policies to say exactly what needs to be saved in those funds so that we're not saving for a rainy day, but then not actually addressing the rainy day we have right now. So we've been able to pull a lot of one-time money out of that. And I think that's a good thing for us to do moving forward. I think the other thing we can do is actually better maintenance on our roads. Part of the problem with our roads that need to be fully reconstructed is that we haven't been doing that preventative maintenance over the last 20 to 25 years. That's something we've put in place to make sure that we're actually keeping up with the roads that are nice now so that they don't become problems that we need to spend multiple millions of dollars to fix in the future.
All right, the next question is yours, Mr. Joyce. What is the most critical issue facing Stillwater right now, and how do you propose we address it? And for the purpose of this question, I'm going to exclude transportation, visitor development, and a new fire station, because those are all going to the voters so you're not going to get the easy shot, okay?
Okay, so the most critical issue that's not transportation, the fire station, or the visitors tax?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I will say, I think generally what I see as the most pressing need in our community is a sense of urgency and a sense of needed investment. I think one of the things that I've seen in Stillwater over the course of my 35 years that I've lived here, and certainly over the last few, is that our community has a huge economic engine in the middle of town that does great things for our community. It brings lots of tax money in. There are new students here every year buying things, renting apartments, all that sort of thing. I think it allows us to become complacent as a community. We don't make the investments that we need to make. Our community hasn't passed a funding bond to build new infrastructure in this community in 20 years. The cities around us that we compete with, places like Enid, Ponca, all the suburbs in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, they are investing in their communities at a much higher level than we are. And I think that's partly because we are complacent. We're used to, well, Stillwater is just the way it is. And we have these funds coming in, we have new students coming, but we need to invest more to bring people outside of that. We need to diversify Stillwater outside of just being a student-driven economy. And to do that, we've got to make the investments that our city needs. Thank you.
Mr. Trotter.
So I think the most important thing that our city needs is a fresh perspective, particularly a perspective of how can we better manage what the citizens are already giving us, right? How can we change our minds and remember that we are public servants? I'm literally, if I step into this role, I'm not going up to be your leader. I'm stepping down to serve you. I'm actually lowering myself below each and every one of you. That's my sincere opinion. So with that in mind, we're a nation of kings. We need to remember that. You're not here to serve me. I'm here to serve you. And so how can I serve you best other than to protect your finances? It's always a little bit more here, a little bit more there. Let's get a little more there. And then we have these years where this inflation shoots through the roof, or sometimes it doesn't. But nonetheless, we're still asking each other, where can I get more? Where can I get more? I have budget conversations with my wife all the time. We talk about, oops, we got off track a little. How do we rein it in? I don't go to my neighbor's doors and say, hey, I'd like some of your money. So I don't think the government should be doing that either.
All right, next question is yours, Mr. Trotter. If elected, would you work to keep the city government generally on its current course, or do you see need for significant changes?
Yeah, as far as operationally going, I think generally speaking, the people we hire are probably doing a pretty good job. There's just some ideological shifts that need to occur, right? Just some minor changes, like in an ocean. If you started on one end of the Pacific and head to the other end, just a tiny change can drastically change your end destination. I don't think we have to make sweeping changes. I don't want to go in there and just make mindless cuts and not consider the consequences. The reality is we've been off course for decades. We've gotten off course with what the will of the people was. And so this is going to take intense, dedicated, long effort and careful consideration. And so I think the important thing we need to change in our city is shift our ideology. How do we respect what you have trusted us with better? How do we shine more light on what's happening?
Mr. Joyce.
Repeat that question for me, Kevin.
Certainly. If elected, would you work to keep the city government generally on its current course, or do you see a need for significant changes?
Well, I think it would be weird if I stood up here after 6 years on the city council and told you we need sweeping changes, but there are definitely things that we can and should be working to change. I think, in terms of city government, when we've looked at internally what's happening at the city, there are issues within the development department. There are issues within sort of how we do public safety and how we fund public safety that we want to continue to look at. So I wouldn't say sweeping changes, but I think one of the things we've worked on a lot and we still need to work on more is making Stillwater more developer friendly and more inviting for folks who want to come in. We've got several hundred houses either under construction or planning to be under construction. Part of that is because we have become a little bit better at encouraging those kinds of developments, but there's a lot of work we can continue to do to make that process more predictable, more streamlined, so people don't get different answers every time they come and talk to the city about a development that might be coming in. There are definitely some issues that are still there, but I think those are operational changes within how we do things in some of our departments that, again, are in process right now, but certainly have a ways to go.
All right. The next question. In recent years, we've seen the city make increased use of tax increment finance districts. Do you support the use of this economic development tool going forward?
Absolutely. I do. I think we need to continue to make use of tax increment financing in very targeted ways. What we've seen with tax increment financing, we passed the initial downtown redevelopment TIF right about the same time I got elected back in 2018. We started to see it ramp up, and then, or at least interest in development ramp up, and then COVID kind of came in and slowed it all down. Right now, we've got a ton of activity happening when it comes to tax increment financing. I think the thing that makes it so attractive and so useful for a community like Stillwater is it doesn't take any money out of any other pots. What it does is it says, you want to come redevelop our Boomer Lake station, our old electric station. It's currently collecting 0 property tax right now. If you come and invest $25 or $30 million into that station, it now has created an increment of property tax, and we can use a part of that brand new money that would not have existed without your development to help incentivize that development. That's happening. That project is happening because tax increment financing was available. And I think there are other projects in town, certainly the hotel convention center project. We have several projects happening downtown where we've seen even small investments there through tax increment financing make development possible that would not be possible without it.
Mr. Trotter.
This is an area I always sought a little more clarity on. It's one that it seemed a little lost on me because every time I heard it from different people, the description I was given seemed to change. Particularly, the city says, well, these properties weren't generating property tax revenue. No development will come in without this TIF, right? That's what they say. And then I hear from others in our community that say, well, actually, as a matter of fact, there are properties that the property tax will be coming from. And what the TIF is doing is it's redirecting that funding from other entities that need it, right? Now, as I stated earlier, the only fair tax is a sales tax. But in the state of Oklahoma, while we have property tax, it needs to be apportioned according to the will of the people, okay? Right now, with the TIFs in place, that tax flow is not, it's coming from the county's apportionment, the public school apportionment, and Meridian. So, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't know, okay? I'm trying to gain some clarity here, but it seems to me like hearing things like it's not coming from anywhere. I don't know. I'm not hearing that from everybody. I'm a little lost on that. I'm a little lost on why they're saying that. The reality is I'm told from some people it is coming from other places that actually depend on that revenue.
All right, Mr. Trotter, next question. How should the city council be evaluated? In other words, how should we as citizens measure your success if you're the mayor?
So, as James Madison said, and I'm going to butcher this a little, but the proper object of government is to secure our property and secure our rights. That is the primary object of the government. So that's my measuring line. If we're not working to secure your property, secure your rights, and protect your liberty, we're not doing our job. Again, we're a nation of kings. How can one king say to another, you have to do this or you can't do that with your property? I'm not talking about when there's situations where they're obviously damaging their property or there's very obvious apparent risk at play, but I am talking about the tangible things. And this to me is a very clear way to know how your government is doing. Do they trust you to exercise your authority over your domain, or are they scared of you? Are they going to afford you the liberty in the form of your money or your rights, or are they not? So, by my mind and in my standards, the best measurement is, am I protecting your rights? Am I protecting your properties? And am I being transparent?
Mr. Joyce.
Well, I think the good thing is we have a very clear standard of evaluation for our city council every year. There's an election for at least one councilor every year. Election results will tell you whether people think you're doing a good job or not, for one thing. And that's a useful thing. I think from my standpoint, I mean, it's hard for me to tell you what you should think, how you should evaluate the job I do as mayor. From my standpoint, what I try to do, and the way I sort of work through it in my own head is, am I doing all of the work I can do to represent as broad of a cross section of Stillwater as I can represent? Am I taking the time to hear from as many people as I can hear from? Am I gathering that input? Am I communicating well with the folks that have interests in the issues that we're dealing with? And am I making the best decision I can make given the circumstances that I'm put in? And from my standpoint, that's what makes, if I feel like I'm doing that, I feel like I'm doing the best job I can do. Now, you're all going to have different standards, and that's why we have elections. But I think what we should be looking at from our counselors is, are they listening? Are they using as broad of a base of information as they can to make the best decisions possible?
All right, Mr. Joyce, next question is yours. What will you personally do to improve transparency of city government and responsiveness to its citizens?
That's an issue that we've I think talked about a lot and addressed at several different levels since I've been on the council. One of the things that unfortunately, COVID kind of helped or kept us from doing quite as many outreach sort of programs that we used to do with counselor office hours and that sort of thing, bringing people together to say, hey, just come talk to us about whatever's out there. I think, again, from my standpoint, if you send me an email, if you post on something on my Facebook page, if you reach out with a sincere question, I'm going to sit down and talk to you about it. And I think from a council perspective, we have that same mindset, right? Is that we're here to serve the citizens of this community, and we're here to talk to you and to give you straight answers about the things that you're interested in hearing about. And I've never shied away from having those conversations with anybody, whether they were critical of me or whether they disagreed or not. I've sat down and had conversations with a very wide spectrum of the folks here in Stillwater about the issues that concern them. And I think that's what we need to continue to do. But I do want us to see us bring back some of the more formal. We did a sort of a traveling city hall that we've done at some of our events, and we'll continue to see more of that come back online as we move outside the pandemic.
All right, Mr. Trotter.
Please repeat the question.
Certainly. What will you personally do to improve transparency of city government and responsiveness to its citizens?
So, as I stated, transparency is key, right? The reality is, it all comes back to shining a light in the areas that are a bit ambiguous. And the reality is, I've seen a pattern. I've seen a pattern I'm not comfortable with. I've seen a pattern that makes me I asked a lot of the same questions that a lot of my friends and neighbors, all of us have asked. Like, what happened to the Wondertorium? Okay, like, what happened? I don't know. That was involved with city government. I didn't get any clarity on things. I don't know what's going on. What's happening with the money we should have had for the roads? Well, there's some ambiguity on that. When we ask certain questions, it seems to be always covered in some kind of a shroud in certain areas. I'm not sure why. I don't know. Maybe there's really good reasons for that. I don't know. But I want to make sure that when I answer you, it's with clarity. If you ask me a specific question, I want to give you a specific answer. I will give you a specific answer. And if I don't know the answer, I will find that answer for you, because on the local level government, there really shouldn't be a shroud.
All right, we're going to proceed to closing statements. And Christy, we're going to do 4 minutes. We got an early start, so I've got time. So since Mr. Joyce went first during opening statements, Mr. Trotter will begin the closing statements. You have 4 minutes.
Whoa, 4 minutes. Okay. Well, as I said, my name is Marc Trotter, and my whole goal here is to bring illumination, right? Just like in my line of work. I've done this we're coming up on 15 years. And it's rather poetic that I'm seeking your approval for this office, to bring some illumination, to shed some light on things, questions that we all have, things that we're looking for answers on. And so the reality is, I'm not an attorney. I didn't go to school. I'm self-taught. I didn't get, and I won't, and I'm not seeking to get Stillwater's Citizen of the Year award. I'm not looking for these kinds of things. What I am is I'm an honest, hardworking, tax-paying citizen. My friends and my family acknowledge, and they have agreed, and they usually will tell you, I'm a man of integrity. I've lived a life of integrity. And so with that in mind, I want to bring honesty and integrity and transparency into our government. I don't have all the answers, but I'm committing to you to learn, right? To find them, to gain a greater understanding, but most of all, to bring transparency to you, to correct the things that perhaps have gotten off track, maybe not even on purpose. That happens, but we need to correct it. We need to get it back on course. We need to protect people's rights, people's property, the people's money. And so with that in mind, I hope you'll vote for me, Marc Trotter.
All right, Mr. Joyce, you have up to 4 minutes.
Well, we've touched on a few pretty big issues here that are facing the city of Stillwater as we move forward. And, you know, I think a lot of those things are the questions I get on a pretty regular basis, right? Transportation, what are we doing to fund roads? How are we funding public safety? How are we dealing with the growth and the development of our community? And how are we bringing more amenities and more opportunities for people who live here in Stillwater to raise their families here, to work here, to retire here? And those are all questions that we have focused on and dealt with during my time on the city council, and that what I will continue to focus on moving forward. I think when it comes down to looking forward about how do you make a decision on who to vote for mayor? I think you want to look at things like experience. I think you want to look at issues like, is this someone who has been open and has talked and has sat down and had these conversations? Just looking around the room, there are several folks that I have sat down in this room and talked about several of these issues with, and I look forward to doing that more. We have a lot of opportunities right now in Stillwater. We have a booming economy. Our last 2 years of sales tax collections have been the 2 highest years on record. Last month, our November sales tax collections were up 30% over the year before. We have a lot of activity happening in Stillwater. We have a lot of building happening in Stillwater. We have a lot of new amenities coming to Stillwater. The wonderful generous donation from Kicker on our Block 34 project is going to create a beautiful facility right in the middle of our town. There is a lot of positive things happening right now. There are a lot of positive things happening right now in Stillwater. And we've got to figure out, how do we keep that going? How do we continue to invest in our community, continue to invest in the opportunities that bring more people here? I talked a lot the last time I ran about why I came back to Stillwater and how it took me 3 or 4 years to find a job here that I could come back and move my family here for. And I've talked in my 4 years as mayor to a lot of people who are in that same situation, or who have been in that same situation. They want to be here. They need the job opportunity. They need the opportunities for their family, to have the things to do, to have the facilities and the amenities that they're looking for. We have that opportunity in our community right now that we have not had in a long time. We have more opportunity here than we've had in recent memory. And I look forward to the opportunity to continue working on those things and continue building that opportunity here in Stillwater. I think that it's a great time to be in Stillwater, and it's a great time to continue pushing this community forward. And I hope that you will join me in doing that by voting on February 8th for me. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank both of you for being here today. All of us remember Election Day is February 8th. In-person absentee voting at the Payne County Administration Center is Thursday and Friday the week before on the 3rd and 4th. And the candidates will be available for a few minutes after the meeting. Thank you.